My name is Frej Fenniche. I am the regional representative of No Peace Without Justice in the MENA region, and I will be the moderator of this panel discussion. Today's session will focus on Libya. This is the second one in a series of similar actions. Last week, No Peace Without Justice focused on Yemen at the occasion of the 5th anniversary of the war there. Today, we will travel with us to Libya, this beautiful country, a peaceful people, and a great potential for a sustainable human development. Unfortunately, since 2011, Libya is witnessing a great level of instability, political division, civil war, economic crisis, social fracture, lack of good governance, and continuous human rights violations. Since last April, the war has intensified with more military involvement of external actors, Emirates, Turkey, Egypt, Qatar, Russia, and many others. The objective of these weekly web streams is to raise awareness and concerns about the impact of COVID-19 on the global situation in general and on the human rights in particular. Today, we'll look at the situation in Libya, thanks to 4 prominent panelists whom I would like to thank. Let me now present our 4 panelists. From Tripoli, Mr. Mohammed Tantoush, civil society activist working with IOM Libya, but he is here on his personal capacity, not representing the views of IOM. From Tunis, close to Libya, Madame Maurine Mercier, a Swiss journalist covering Libya and Tunisia since the Arab Spring. She travels frequently to Libya, east and west. She is well known for her courageous action to cover the war and the situation of migrants crossing the Mediterranean Sea. And from Switzerland, Mr. Ahmed Gasir, a well-known human rights defender in Libya. He's working with Solidarity for Human Rights, very active NGO covering the whole country and dealing with all human rights situations, including impunity, war crimes, detention, migrants, and justice system. And from Rome, Madame Emma Bonino, to whom I want to send a special thank you for her availability despite her very busy schedule. She is the founder of No Peace Without Justice and former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Italy, currently Senator in Italy. And beyond that, she's an inspiring to many generations, not only in Italy, but also in Europe and in the MENA region. I don't know if she remembers, but my first meeting with her was in 1992 in Tunis, where we organized together the first international conference against death penalty in the Arab region. Do you remember?
I was much younger.
You are still young.
Okay, more or less.
Thank you, Emma, for being with us this afternoon. It's a great honor to all of us. Thank you to all of you, panelists, for your availability to contribute with No Peace Without Justice in this effort to raise awareness and concerns about the impact of the COVID-19 on the human rights situation in Libya. Our panelists will talk about many issues in relation to COVID-19 in Libya. What's the assessment of the efforts of the Western authorities in the East and as well as in the West on the fight against the pandemic? What's the capacity in this particular context of war of the health sector? How is coping with this crisis? What role civil society organization is playing, and can they do more in this context of war? Freedom of expression and the role of the media, how they can face fake news and the impact of social media like Facebook on the morale of the Libyan people. In the absence of free and independent media or media under control, how can journalists contribute to transmit the right message and to fight against any risk of corruption, discrimination, stigmatization, And also this, the risk of gender-based violence that many women may be exposed to with this confinement. What's about the most vulnerable groups, like children and women, people with disabilities, domestic workers, migrants and refugees, detainees, migrants in detention centers, and of course, the IDPs, the internally displaced peoples? To what extent they can have unequal access to healthcare? Why is the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Guterres' call for a ceasefire in Libya not heard? What are the obstacles for at least a temporary halt of military action during the COVID-19? And we will talk also about international solidarity, which is needed now, maybe more than ever. Where is the international solidarity? How can we mobilize European Union and the UN to give priority to countries in armed conflicts like Libya? Let me start with our guest from Tripoli. We hope that he's fine, and we hope that all Libyans are fine. Mr. Mohammed Tantoush. Mohammed, you are based in Tripoli, you are working in the field, and you are witnessing on a daily basis the situation. What's your assessment of the efforts of the various public authorities in the East as well as in the West, if possible, on the fight against the pandemic? And what's the capacity in this particular context of war of the health sector? How medical sector is coping with the crisis? And can you also talk about the role that civil society organization are playing today, and can they do more in this context of war? Please.
Thank you, Mr. Farage. It's a pleasure to be here with you at this panel, and hi for everyone, for the panelists and for the people who are watching us live right now. First of all, before we talk about the capacity and how the different authorities are dealing with the current situation, we will have to recall the context briefly. The various authorities in Libya are mainly a result of political division, as there is an internationally recognized government in the West, and which is as a quota government more than it's a government for experts or for people who are who can do something in such occasions. While in this there is a military rule with a civilian government that is not actually recognized by international community, and are following the orders of who is really in controlling the East, which is the General Command of the Libyan Arab Army, led by Haftar. In between the period between 2004 and today in 2020, the different governments and authorities were still focusing on the armed conflict, political division, and attempt at political settlement, including many rounds of negotiations. And in the same time, there are no clear development plans for the different sectors, including healthcare sector, except for some ministries who have tried some to develop their sectors like education and Ministry of Interior, which lead to near collapse in various sectors because there was no clear plans. Almost all the sectors are collapsed. Furthermore, as a result of the issues of legitimacy, especially with regards to legislative authorities, the supervisory institution wasn't able to do any of their work. So even though they tried to create some reports that assessing how the different authorities are spending the money, how they are making decisions, but they were not followed by real or effective investigation or accountability. Let's say. Also, we cannot forget about the influence of those who are controlling the armed activities and their impact on decision makers. So we can say that the lack of transparency, transparency, and administrative and financial corruption is always there when we are talking about the different authorities of Libya. Since the last April and until this day, there's a military battles in different regions in the Libyan West, specifically on the borders of the city of Sirte and in the Wishka right now, and the southern neighborhoods of Tripoli, and in addition to some clashes from time to time in the western coast and around the Al-Wutia military base. In addition to this, Libyan's oil production decreased to almost 300,000 barrels due to the closure of the facilities of oil facilities in the east, where some tribes and military forces controlling who are loyal to Haftar stopped all these facilities to work for like 2 months right now. Also, the one last thing about the context, that the health sector in Libya is not even prepared to deal with the regular disease, with the normal conditions. Hospitals lack capabilities. There is an immigration of doctors, and there is an absence of motivation and professional health administration that can motivate doctors and health workers to make a greater effort to develop themselves on their tasks. So we can say that the health sector is almost collapsed before the current situation. So when you are talking about such event like the COVID-19, so the situation is worse, is worse. Now let's talk about what is happening now. When it comes to talking about how the different authorities are dealing with the coronavirus crisis, I cannot accurately describe whether the government response to this crisis came late, because in fact, as I mentioned previously, the health sector is weak in normal conditions. The government response started about 10 days before the first infected case, which was on the 24th of March. The procedure started through a gradual closure of the border, then with a particular curfew that expanded after the first infected case was recorded officially, as well as through several awareness campaigns in partnership with NGOs. And this is where the role of civil society comes, because let's be honest, people are expecting a lot of things from NGOs, but what they can do when actually there is no clear plans of the government to deal with the situation, and if they are not well trained to deal with if the NGOs they are not well trained to deal with such occasion, they will put themselves in dangers. But they are playing a good role right now by taking care of many online campaigns and awareness campaigns to raise the awareness of people to understand what is the COVID-19, how to protect themselves, and to encourage people to stay at home. Also, there's another some NGOs take the role to help the education sector by providing an online education websites. Some NGOs try to help the National Controlling Disease Center by providing a website for them to in order to help people to follow up the updates regarding the COVID-19. What makes all this more difficult? Now there is only 10 cases in Libya, or 10 officially recorded cases in Libya, but there is no real information that, because as you know, what makes all this difficult is there is a little confirmed information about the virus itself, how
cases.
Yes, because we still don't know if there will be more people are infected, but there will not have they don't have any symptoms, and we are aware that maybe in some day we will wake up and there is thousands of infected people without knowing that there is infected people in the current time.
Mohammed, I will get back to you on this point, and in particular about the role of humanitarian NGOs working on humanitarian issues and their capacity or their work in Libya. But let me turn to Maurine Mercier now. Maurine, you are a journalist following the situation in Libya for many years now. You are very familiar with the media sector in Libya and the risk that many journalists are facing. In the absence of free and independent media or media under control in Libya, how can journalists contribute to transmit the right message and to fight against any risk of corruption, discrimination, stigmatization, and also the risk of gender-based violence that many women may be exposed to with this confinement? How they can face fake news, for example, and the impact of social media like Facebook on the morale of the Libyan people?
Hello, everyone.
Please.
Hello. Thank you so much. I'm very glad. First of all, I need perhaps to explain how difficult it is to work as a journalist in Libya. I go as often as I can to Libya. I mean, 2 or 4 times a year, but that's when I'm lucky. It becomes more and more difficult to get a visa as a journalist because the authorities don't want journalists there. First thing we should say, there is no freedom of press in Libya. Libya ranks 163rd out of 180 countries in World Press Freedom Index. It's quite impossible to work as a journalist in Libya, to be really honest. Why? Because the current rulers, and I mean both sides, need propaganda more than information. So as a journalist, you risk your life trying to do your job there. I mean, much more if you're a Libyan, because you have to stay there after you published articles or reports. More than 20 journalists were killed since 2011. A lot of journalists had to stop doing their job, or they had to flee their country. Libya is an information black hole, I would say. To make you understand how much the authorities are not helping you doing your job, it takes 6 to 9 months to get a visa, if you get one. But when you're finally there in Libya, you will need an authorization for everything you want to report on. You need an authorization to go from a city to another. Most of the time you don't get it. You need authorization even to interview people in cafes. So you really need very good contacts, time, and take risk to finally do your job. Libyan journalists always explain me that they would like to do journalism, but it's quite impossible. You have to follow the rules of your media, say only bad things about Mr. Haftar, for example, if you're working for media that is pro-GNA, and the opposite if you're on the other side. So to answer your question, how can journalists contribute to transmit the right message and to fight against any risk of corruption, discrimination, stigmatization? There is no way to do it. And to get information about COVID-19, it's the same problem. It makes people perhaps even more anxious because they know one thing, they just can't believe anyone, even officials. I receive a lot of messages and phone calls since the beginning of COVID-19 from my friends in Libya. They ask me information they can't get there. They try to watch international news, but it's obviously not enough. They need local information. So for sure, this total lack of correct information, I would say, is a burden. It's stressed people even more. In this context, domestic violence is something very, very worrying. It's the same in every country. In Tunis, where I am now, the number of violence reported against women has increased 5-fold compared to the same period last year because of confinement. Libyan women are even more vulnerable, I would say, because of war. So many men, husbands, brothers suffer from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So they are not able to go out, obviously, to have to stay at home because of COVID-19. This can increase the aggressivity against women. So before COVID-19, and more than ever, now Libya absolutely should need independent media. It's an essential to stop the war. It's essential for Libyans to protect themselves from COVID-19 and social impact, I would say.
But it's a pity because even for the authorities, to have a free listen to us.
That's a very difficult question. I have no advice to to tell to the Libyan. They will manage to do this much better than me. But I was thinking perhaps a national media would be a solution. I'm always surprised when I go to Tripoli. People will ask me what is happening in Benghazi, and when I'm in Benghazi, people are asking me what is happening in Tripoli. So it's my advice. When I talk to my friends and not the authority, I talk to my friend and I say, just talk, try to use Facebook, and you try to reach someone in Benghazi if you live in Tripoli, and the opposite. And you will see that you have a brother there and not an enemy, not a fighter. You have a brother fighting everything you have to fight. So I think now the solution, because the authority are not just able to get, they're not able to do this national media. I would say people have to talk, and Libyan people know perfectly, perhaps more than everyone, how to talk. So they just need to talk. So I would say use Facebook and talk.
Thank you very much, Maurine. I can see Mr. Ahmed Al-Gasir following the debate and what Maurine just mentioned. Let me ask you, Ahmed, to focus on specific human rights issues. The media is also a human rights issue and freedom of expression for sure. What's about the most vulnerable groups like children and women, people with disabilities, domestic workers, migrants and refugees, detainees, migrant in detention centers? We have many. And IDPs, the internally displaced people. To what extent they can have unequal access to healthcare? What would be the obligation of the authorities toward their protection? What do you recommend, if you can, in order to protect them? Please, Ahmed.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Frej, for inviting me to this discussion. If I start with giving you the context of the situation in Libya, you have a war. You have the main source of income of the GDP in Libya, accounting for 90 or 93%, is almost shut down. There's no income. You have a health system in Libya which is, it's not functioning to the point that large majority of Libyans, they have to travel to neighboring countries for this is in northern Libya. Now, with the COVID, with the advent of this pandemic, we have a shutdown on travel. So people who were seeking going abroad for medical treatment, they don't have it anymore. And then you have this highly contagious disease. So you have what I would call the elements of a perfect storm, if I may say. All Libyans are in a very vulnerable situation, again, facing this pandemic. I mean, you see countries that are well advanced in their health systems, and they are struggling with it. And the groups that you have mentioned, all of them are in particular in an even worse situation. Start with the disabled people. Disabled people, there are no facilities for disabled in Libya, almost non-existent.
In normal situation.
In normal situation. So there is no facility.
What's about now?
Accessibility and all that stuff is not available for them. There is nothing. That's one group. The other groups, that the three most vulnerable, in my opinion, are the IDPs, the people in detention centers because of the confinement and you have overcrowding, and the migrants. And let me start with the IDPs. You have according to the IOM in December, the estimate is that there were 655,000 IDPs in Libya. Sorry, 356,000 Libya. Yeah, 356. That's according to the IOM report. 140,000 are in Tripoli, IDPs of Tripoli, the surrounding towns. Most of the IDPs, a lot of them, they have to manage for themselves for getting accommodation and what. A lot of them use abandoned schools, abandoned public buildings as accommodation, where you have overcrowding and you have, like in schools especially, you have a family in one room and they have to share one toilet, maybe 10 or something families sharing one toilet. And you have also a large number who are have found homes in unfinished construction projects where you don't have any facilities, no running water, no sanitation, and no electricity. And in this pandemic, I mean, the first, anywhere you go, they will tell you that you have to have wash your hands always and watch your environment and no overcrowding. And you have like 3 families, sometimes in some situation, you have 3 families sharing the same flat. This is how desperate is the situation for them. And when you come to the detainees, you have overcrowding in many detention centers. And I give an example in Maitiga Detention Center, where you have, according to the High Commissioner report that was due to be presented before the Human Rights
Council. Yeah,
there are 2,600 people in a small area, where you have some cells with 30, 35 people in one single cell. They have to even sleep in shifts, so that they can use the space. Some people stand up and the others have to sleep. No sanitation, no air circulation or anything. This is a perfect environment for a massive
contamination.
Infection. The same thing in Benghazi, in Al-Quaifia detention prison complex, where you have something in the estimate of 2,500 there, also in poor conditions and so on. And we have heard the reports of people died there with acute lung infections the past week. Some suspect that they are actually COVID cases. And then you come to the migrants. The migrants, our organization was always advocating for releasing the migrants in detention centers, because it's even I don't know, it's stupid. I mean, what's the point of detaining 5,000 people when you have 650,000 migrants in Libya, according to the IOM? I mean, why you're only creating a problem there, and you're creating a business opportunity for some people.
But Ahmed, I guess that the authorities are doing something to these people, like the detainees and the migrants.
Yeah.
And also for the IDPs.
Yeah. Well, the IDPs nothing to mention. Okay. Mm-hmm. For the detention centers, I mean, the families have to bring in the food, and they have to buy the medicine and bring it in to their detained relatives.
Okay.
So there's no medical care, food, even water, bottled water. They have to buy it and bring it to them.
This is the normal situation, but it seems that they released some of them recently.
Very little. We have our organization issued a press release last week, demanding that they have to either release them, especially the ones that without a trial, indefinite detention without trial, or if there are people who are sentenced or something and doing their sentence, serving their sentence, then move them to an environment that's suitable for
So
them.
this is also something that the authorities can take decision on, and it's in the benefit of the authorities to release some of them or more of them, let's say, people who are not tried, people who are not causing any security risk.
Yeah, they should.
It would be good for them. For
Yeah.
I will stop here, and maybe I will get back to you regarding the NGOs, and in particular human rights NGOs working in the field, which is a very difficult field. But I have to say that they are doing really very, very well. Many of them are following us, and maybe I will get back to you. Now, it's clear that there is a need to do more, for sure. And I'm sure Senator Emma Bonino would agree with me. Based on the experience of many countries, no single country can fight alone against the pandemic and succeed. Italy is one example, and many other countries, including European countries and the US, for example, and Gulf states. Let me have the pleasure to give the floor to Senator Emma Bonino, who is a leading voice in human rights in Europe, currently at the Italian Senate. Emma, you have always maintained that human rights in Libya cannot be ignored. So my question to you, would you please tell us why is the Secretary General of the United Nations call for a ceasefire in Libya not heard? What are the obstacles for at least a temporary halt of military action during the COVID-19? Where is the Security Council? And international solidarity is most needed today to support Libya than ever. Where is the international solidarity? Where is the international community? How can we mobilize the European Union and the UN in general to give priority to countries in armed conflicts like Libya? The floor is yours,
Yeah,
Emma.
thank you for the question. But the answer for me is very, very simple. It's simply because nobody cares, first of all. And secondly, because countries that do care are fighting each other. So the reasons, the humanitarian catastrophes are normally the evidence of a political failure, are the consequence of a political failure. Now, as you know, in the first months and even year, there has been a lot of bilateral, trilateral, international meeting to try to find a solution on Libya, and all of them have failed. Even the last one, where apparently there had been agreed a sort of a truce or stop the war for a while. I don't think it has been relevant or really made effective. So if you look at Europe, for instance, it's evident the different interests of Italy and France, for instance. Other members of the European Union are simply not involved, not interested. Others are interested but fighting each other because of oil, because of geopolitical strategy, because whatever you want.
Yeah.
So France stands more or less with General Haftar, and Italy stands with so-called government of Serraj, that I don't think, of course, everybody knows that is not a proper government, that is not in charge of the territory, maybe he's in charge of his own apartment, but not much more than that. And on top of that, in fact, Italy was really very involved when we had the migrants invasion, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And we, as a caricature of the agreement we made with Turkey, we also made an agreement with the so-called Libyan authorities that, in fact, is facade, we made an agreement, in fact, with most or many of the militias here and there, and the previous traffickers have become the Coast Guard. They change dress, but they are always the same.
Yes.
And we helped sending boats, military boats, etc., etc. Everything we were available to do in order to stop the so-called migrant invasion. Now that it is more or less stopped for a reason that I don't know, nobody cares about Libya in my country, or in anything else on foreign policy. They just are involved in national issue, the pandemic that for the moment, with all the efforts, we couldn't manage to stop the contagion. And we care a little bit of a dialogue with the other member states of Europe, again, accusing each other of lack of solidarity, accusing each other, etc. The usual story, right?
Yes.
But if it is a moment in which Libya is not nowhere to be seen on the political spectrum in Italy, is now. Which is, in my opinion, a short-minded vision, because if the virus explodes in Libya, it will not stay in Libya. In Libya will stay the Libyan people or refugees, but in the detention center, etc., etc. But the virus will not stop here, right? But that is just the reason. Is a political issue that has not been solved, and it's of course it's a proxy war of many people in many countries, and simply they couldn't find any interest to find a sort of a compromise or a sort of a solution. And I don't know what I have to invent more. Sometimes I think that if the refugees would start again to cross the Mediterranean, maybe they will wake up. But for the moment, they are not doing it. So we look elsewhere.
But Emma, it's a shame for Europe and its values to continue this situation without any sign of solidarity.
Oh, yes.
People. And when it comes to the oil, all of them will run to Libya. So why not now? And can we leave Libyans without any support from the international community to stop the war at least? So what can we do more?
I don't know what I have to invent more. And even when I try to be vocal on this issue in the very few debates on foreign policy in the Senate, I am normally, the reaction is in Facebook, etc., is tons of insults. I never cared about these people because Nelson Mandela told me one day that people who use insult, they qualify themselves. It's not the receiver that is qualified. Is the one who are using this system. So don't care. But recently I am a little bit more worried because this insult, fake news, etc., are becoming more aggressive by the day, more aggressive.
Yes.
Even calling for violence against me, or somebody will kill you luckily one day or another, etc., etc., etc. So in any case, we are trying in any case to, but it's really not only an uphill struggle. If you say, look, the detention center, blah, blah, the answer will be, we have problem of overcrowded detention center in Italy. So why do we have to care for Libya? The usual nationalist, sovereignist point of view. First the Italian, then we will see. But even the Italian, they don't care about. We have a population in jail of 62,000 people. The capacity is 47,000. So you have 8 people in 3x3 cell.
Meters, yeah.
And also the functionary, the police, they are not tested. So we had today the first known case of a detainees who have died of coronavirus. Wow. And I don't know if this will sound at least as a wake-up call.
Inshallah. Let's hope.
Let alone of the 60,000 people, 62,000 people that we have in the Center for Repatriation or the Center for people waiting for legalization, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Also, there is no medical scrutiny, neither for them nor for the medical team that work with them. But there is no way. There is no way to make people focus on this issue.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Emma. Let me go back very quickly to Mohammed and ask him about the role.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
I have received today from a friend an initiative that I think you know about, promoted by the Center for Humanitarian Dialogue. I know the director when we were both much younger. And they say to me, maybe you know it already, or I will pass you the website. They say 1,000 leading figures from across Libya have signed the call for unity launched on March 24 to combat the COVID pandemic, etc., etc. I don't know. I don't even know how these people. But are there the Libyan people? Are they very much connected to internet, etc.?
I will let Mohammed answer because he's in Tripoli, so he may know about that. And at the same time, I wanted to ask him about the work of UN humanitarian agencies. Are they doing something, or they cannot do for security reason? Do they have access? Mohammed, please, very quickly, because we will wrap up the discussion and we'll end this debate. Mohammed?
Well, actually, Mr. Faraj, as you know, I don't have the authority to talk about the UN rule right now, as I am a staff.
No, if they have access, if they are doing something or not. It's not an assessment of their role.
Let me say, in general, they are trying to do something based on capacity and the conditions that they have. But also, I want to refer one last important thing, Mr. Faraj, if you let me, because it's also linked to the most vulnerable people during this situation, and which is the economic aspect of this crisis of COVID-19. Because as you know, in Libya, the most of there was no response plan for the government to the economic challenges during this crisis. And here I want to refer to one very important article made by Ms. Hala Bogagis, one of the development expertise in Libya, which talked about how this situation will affect the private sector, because as we know, the GDP and the income of the country is not based on, is not rely on the private sector as much as the oil industry, but also there is people who are rely on daily working and the private sector as a main source of income or as a second source of income to help themselves, and they are the most of them, they are affected by this situation, because the only people who are allowed to work right now and the only project, it's the food items, who are providing food items or medical items. But we are talking about daily workers and migrants as an example. They are very affected by this situation. And also they are the people who have small and micro projects, and women are among those people. There are many women taking care of their families by providing this food items and food service. And also coffee shops, the travel agencies, a lot of economic projects were affected, and the government, they did nothing. They only did only one thing, which is the right of the people. They give them their salary of February and January and March. This is not a plan, and I don't know how they will make a plan for this.
Yeah, let's say also that the situation is really very, very difficult to manage.
Yes, and
it's not an easy situation. And some countries, very developed countries, they faced a lot of problems to manage the situation. Let me ask Ahmed, because I can see that he wants to say something as a comment on Emma's comments and the question, in particular about the march. Ahmed.
And I was actually about Mohammed, because he refrained. He didn't want to speak about the work of the international organizations. Well, according to our people in the ground there, it's the IOM is delivering. It's the delivering sanitation, personal hygiene kits, and blankets. Also helping in the sanitation of disinfecting centers of migration detention centers. That's what they're doing. Therefore, the UNHCR, they are not doing anything. They are doing 1.5 hours or something like that. Receiving calls from refugees who are stranded here and there, there. The problem is this, that was the government contracts for providing food for migrants in detention centers has stopped for quite a while, and out of the 13 migrant centers in Western Libya, only 5 are now open. They were closed mainly because of the war, of the fighting. Now, these five, why for these centers, they really have to change the what you call the work of the IOM. They have to add to it that deliver food, because these people are left without food. And some centers, they let them go out to work and get back. But now with the COVID, there's no work. We have comments of people. That's one. The solution, the situation is very grave, but the solution to it, the first step, stop this mad war. Stop it. Yes, and I think the international community, despite the fact that they are really now, every country is trying to fight to stop this pandemic, and it's within its borders and so on. So they are busy, and that's why we have seen the last in March we have seen an escalation in the war, because everybody was looking, everybody's not looking in Libya now, but they can do, because the problem in Libya is the external forces that they are feeding it. And I think they have to do something about that if they want to stop it. And also Libyans have to have their own, they have to step up to their responsibility and stop being used by others.
Exactly. No, thank you very much for this point, Ahmed. In particular, how to stop or to call to stop the war, because this is the entry point. If you want to improve the situation, if you want to succeed in fighting the COVID-19, we have first to stop the war. And let me say something, because I'm a former UN staff, and I was working in many countries in armed conflict, like DRC, Congo Kinshasa, Burundi, Rwanda, and all these countries. I know very well the work and the very difficult work of the UN agencies, other humanitarian agencies. In Libya, they are trying to do a lot, and we have to recognize that, including IOM, UNSMIL in general. But it's not very easy for them and for the personnel, for the staff, to work when there is insecurity, for example, or there is denial to access. So the first point, I know you referred to the report of the High Commissioner for Human Rights and UNSMIL on the detention centers, the recent one. And this report is really very important because this is the first report on these detention centers and the situation of detainees, or the most recent one. I want also to congratulate UNICEF because they are doing on a daily basis. First, they are really working in the field. They are distributing foods and materials to many schools and children, but also these days they have a daily, in their Facebook page, a daily information on how to deal with COVID-19, how to protect children, how to protect families, etc., which is also good. I think we reached the time, and it's time now to wrap up. I would like really to thank you, Madame Emma Bonino, for sharing with us your thoughts, concerns, advice, and experience. We are grateful to you because we know that you have a very busy schedule, and your presence is very important for all of us. You are always inspiring us. To Mohammed, Maurine, and Ahmed, a big thank you for your availability, for your contribution to this interesting exchange of views. No Peace will continue to work hard during these very difficult times to support the efforts of all Libyan actors, in particular the dynamic civil society in Libya, to achieve a peaceful and political solution, to stop the war, and to find a political solution to the conflict. And we will continue to be vigilant with regard to the human rights situation in Libya and elsewhere. To our audience who are streaming with us, I would like to thank you, and we count on your support and vigilance. All the best to everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Stay safe. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Emma.